Hello, welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about book bans. If you follow bookish news, especially if you're an American, you may have seen a bill that was entered into Congress proposing a nationwide book ban. We're going to talk about what this bill says, why it's pissing me off, because predictably, a book ban bill is going to piss me off, and one thing that I would love for my fellow Americans to do with me. Last year in 2025, I called Congress a lot. I was mad. I'm still mad, but I got out of the habit of calling and I got tired, and that's not an excuse. It's just what happened. It's just a fact. And that sort of thing happens to all of us. Then this bill pops up. I've been putting off calling because I hate making phone calls. I've never liked it. It ramps up my anxiety even when I know I'm going to get a voicemail, even when I know I have a valid reason for calling, even when I know that the other person wants me to call. That still is problematic for me if it's a cold call in particular. And I'll bet some of you feel similarly, especially if you've never called Congress before. This was me last year. And honestly, the thing that got me to call last year was I came across a YouTube video of someone calling their representative on a video, and it demystified the whole thing for me. So I'm going to do that same thing for all of you. I'm going to get you mad first, though. I'm going to cut some of the administrative text of this bill, but I will be reading directly from it. We're going to get straight quotations. And to quote my favorite childhood TV show, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to link to the bill in the description so you can read it for yourself. You can see which parts I left out. Again, administrative. And you can make your own conclusion about what it says and what it's actually doing. The bill is H.R. 7661, entered into the House of Representatives on February 24th, 2026. A bill to amend the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 to prohibit the use of funds provided under such act to develop, implement, facilitate, host, or promote any program or activity for, or to provide or promote literature or other materials to children under the age of 18 that includes sexually oriented material and for other purposes. Now, this is just the description, and it sounds harmless enough if you don't look too closely, but if you've visited my channel, especially during October, you know that this kind of think of the children language is really rampant amongst people who are trying to ban books for ideological reasons. It's a common excuse for censorship. Hence the name of this act, which is highly euphemistic and inflammatory. This act may be cited as the Stop the Sexualization of Children Act. Already, with the title, they are suggesting that if you oppose this act, you belong in a certain set of not quite fully released files as of the time of this filming. Who knows if my lifetime will ever see the release of said files. But this is PR, people. It is PR. When you read the text, which we're going to do together, you will see this bill is not what the title and even the summary suggest. It is not harmless, and it's doing a lot more than it seems to be proclaiming so far. The first section, prohibiting funding for sexually oriented material. In general, no funds under this act may be used to develop, implement, facilitate, host, or promote any program or activity for, or to provide or promote literature or other materials to children under the age of 18 that includes sexually oriented material, including any program, activity, literature, or material that exposes such children to nude adults, individuals who are stripping, or lewd or lascivious dancing. Let's break it down. There's a lot of vague language here. Sexually oriented material is an incredibly subjective phrase, and it's one that we see in censorship a lot, and in book banning discussions a lot. As we'll see later, there are exceptions to this nude adults rule, especially when it comes to classic art. How many items of clothing are required to constitute stripping? I don't know. It's vague. I'm assuming that they're referring to sex workers in a club, but it could also include the way it's written, someone on the beach who is wearing a bathing suit under their street clothes, someone getting ready to take a shower or go to sleep. That could also be interpreted as stripping. depending on how you want to think about a book or how much you want to ban it. And don't even get me started on lewd and lascivious dancing. Now, I suspect that when I say that phrase, you have an idea in your mind, as do I, of what this means or what it's intended to mean. But again, it's broad and it's very much in the eye of the beholder. And where do you draw the line? Are we talking about sex workers again? Or are we talking about backup dancers in a rap video? Are we talking about belly dance? What about the context of that dancing? Is that relevant? Everyone's line is going to be in a different place, and most people's lines are not going to be straight. So again, very, very broad language. Let's jump into the next section. Rule of construction. Nothing in this subsection shall be construed to prohibit the use of funds under this act for, or otherwise limit or interfere with, teaching A. Standard science coursework, including biology, botany, zoology, microbiology, cytology, genetics, ecology, human health, or human anatomy and physiology. B. The texts of major world religions. C. Classic works of literature. Or D. Classic works of art. Okay, so these are the exceptions to the rules. We've got the sciences. Again, this is an including list that doesn't list every single science. I would think that the sciences not listed here could be up for debate. Not that I think they should list every single science, but you create those holes. How do you define major world religion? Is it the quote unquote big three of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam? Does that include things like Buddhism, which is also a very large religion? Hinduism? Like there's so many different religions. What constitutes major? Unclear. So if the material falls into one of these categories, schools can still get funding if they use it or for those materials. Classic works of literature and classic works of art are broad terms as well, but don't worry, we have definitions. And yes, those definitions include exceptions to this exception. Now I'm going to break down the definitions by term and talk about each one. Definitions in this subsection. A. Classic works of art. The term classic works of art means the works of art depicted, referenced, or otherwise represented in Smart History Guide to AP Art History, Volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 2019 to 2020, published by Smart History. I was not familiar with Smart History when I first read this bill, so I looked it up. I don't have the books, but I did check out the website, and I skimmed through some of the art that they're saying on the website is in those books. On the face of it, it seems like a fine representation of various artists across the world. I'm certainly not an expert and I didn't spend hours combing through it. And I even found some nudes in there. However, Smart History is funded by the US government, specifically the National Endowment of the Humanities. That means that if this law is passed and someone decides to object to something that is in Smart History's publication, the government can put pressure on this organization and threaten to remove funding if they don't remove certain works of art from their publication, republish it perhaps, redact it, switch to the website and remove those pieces of art from the website. And even if that connection to the government were not there, limiting your exceptions to a single source means that there is a lot that cannot be covered in a single source. And it looked like a pretty comprehensive website, don't get me wrong, but there are millions of works of art, billions probably, that have been created throughout the history of the world. Where do you draw the line? No one source can have everything. So, and one source is only going to scratch the surface. So there's a lot out there that is not protected, quote unquote, under this act. And also, it's just classic works. Any newer art is not protected. So again, if someone objects to, say, Andy Warhol, he could be out. And there's no protection under this law. It's all up for grabs. See the slippery slope? Let's talk about books. B. Classic works of literature. Please note that modern works of literature, just like modern works of art, have no protection under this bill. So we're looking at 50 to 75-ish years of writing of books that are completely unprotected and that anyone can object to on a national level. It's bad enough at the state or district level. At a national level is even worse. It's actually incredibly scary. So 75 years, that's about 1950. Anything published after 1950, not covered. Don't worry, it's more restricted than that, but anything later than that. So you're going to get a lot of diversity of writing as marginalized groups gained access to publishing to be able to publish their work. in the later part of the last century and the first part of this century. I made myself a script and I'm going off of it because it just upsets me so much that this act basically is undoing all of the progress that has been made. So let's look at these 3 sources for classic literature that is exempt from the rule. If a work is listed on one of these 3 sources, and we'll talk about each one in turn, it can be included in the school system, regardless of whether it has quote unquote sexually oriented material, nudity, lascivious dancing, etc. Source number 1, works included in The Great Books of the Western World, 2nd edition, 1990, published by the Encyclopedia Britannica. All right, I got a few problems. 1, I skimmed this list. It's incredibly long, so I did not look at every single work on this list. It's a pretty standard list of those all white, mostly male, mostly English-speaking authors from, as stated in the title, the Western world. So Europe, Americas. You got your dead white guys, handful of dead white gals, and an over-reliance that school systems have historically had on lists like these is the reason that I didn't hear about James Baldwin or Octavia E. Butler until I was literally an adult, like a solid adult, like in my 30s. That's ridiculous. I should have been reading them in high school. I should have heard of them. I was a voracious reader and I did not come across those works. No one put them in my path. I wasn't aware of them. This was in the early days of the internet, so it wasn't the same kind of discourse. YouTube didn't exist when I was in high school. We're basically taking ourselves back to the 80s and 90s. In fact, we're taking ourselves back to 1990, which is when this list of books was published. 1990. Let's get to our second source. Referenced in the article, Classics Every Middle Schooler Should Read by Thomas Purifoy Jr. and published by Compass Classroom, as such article appeared on the date of enactment of this subsection. Compass Classroom is a website for Christian homeschoolers. Now look, I have nothing against Christian homeschoolers, but they do not represent the entirety of the United States. That is a subset of United States citizens and residents. So to say that schools should be limiting themselves, the safe zone is in this Christian homeschooling space, is really troubling to begin with. Now, this is a short list of books. And given the background that I just gave you, you may be surprised to learn that there are, in fact, books about brown people. But they're not written by brown people. They're written by white people. In fact, Uncle Tom's Cabin is listed as a must-read on this website because, quote, it will probably be unavailable in the next decade considering its subject matter, end quote. Uncle Tom's Cabin, in case you're not aware, is a book famously written by a white woman who was an abolitionist, but she was trying to convince white people at her time in the 1800s who were in favor of slavery that maybe slavery wasn't such a great thing by describing slaves who were black in incredibly stereotypical terms. For her time, she was ahead of her time, but for our time, she was way behind our time. So while this is an important historical work, it's not the full story, and it's certainly not even close to representative of what I think children should be learning about slavery in the United States. So if you're going to read Uncle Tom's Cabin as an example in a school setting, then it should be alongside other age-appropriate, but other books that fill out that story written by Black people, maybe Black people of the time. Black people wrote things in the 1800s. In fact, former slaves wrote things in the 1800s, describing their experiences. Throw some of that together, get a fuller picture, understand the historical context. This list is not encouraging you to do that. This list is encouraging you to read a bunch of white people writing about their experience, which is only one facet. Will probably be unavailable in the next decade considering its subject matter. Number 3, referenced in the article Classics Every High Schooler Should Read by Mary Pearson Purifoy and published by Compass Classroom, as such article appeared on the date of enactment of this subsection. Same source website, so we get more of the same, a bunch of white authors. It's all white folks. Like that's all it is. This list doesn't really have much commentary, though there is a footnote on Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart saying that it might be too violent for some audiences. The audience in question is high schoolers. And if you're not in the United States, high schoolers are about age 15 to 18-ish. And yes, I did clock that those two authors of those two articles have the same last name. I did poke around the website a little bit. I'm just going to say, based on their photos and their bios, I really hope that she's his daughter. I'm going to leave it right there. Leaving it right there. Let's read the next definition of the key term of this bill, which is sexually oriented material. C. Sexually oriented material. The term sexually oriented material means material that, there are two things here, we're going to talk about them separately. 1. Includes any depiction, description, or simulation of sexually explicit conduct as defined in subparagraphs A and B of section 2256 parentheses 2 of Title 18 United States Code. I looked up this code because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know these numbers off the top of my head. This is the existing law that defines child pornography. I'm actually okay with this one sentence in the bill. I too am against child pornography. But the second part of this definition is where I really lose my shit. Part 2, the second part of the definition of sexually oriented material is material that involves gender dysphoria or transgenderism. This is unadulterated transphobia. There is no other explanation for the addition of this bullet in this bill. The term transgenderism, and I'm sorry to say it twice in my video, that is hate speech. It is explicitly hate speech. And to define any mention of trans people as sexually oriented material is not only offensive, but is patently untrue. I've said this before on my channel, but I'm going to say it again with my full chest here in Ms. Pieper's Reading Corner. Trans women are women, trans men are men. Period. Full stop. End of conversation. There are a lot of things that I'm willing to debate and discuss here. That is not one of them. That was the end of the bill, but it's not the end of the video because now I'm going to call Congress and tell them to stop this bullshit. I'm going to do it on video. I wrote up a script for myself based on the language from an app called 5 Calls, more on that later, as well as the everylibrary.org's petition against this bill, HR 7661. I'm going to link to that in the description. And I'll drop the script in the description as well in case you want to make a call. You're welcome to use it, to adapt it, whatever you want to do. All right, let's do this. I am going to bleep out my personal details so as not to dox myself, but I am making this call right now. This is only relevant to the House of Representatives, so I'm going to call my representative, and it's after hours, so I'm expecting to leave a voicemail. It's almost 11 p.m., so I doubt anyone's going to be there. Let's do this. I'm going to make the call.
For calling the D.C. office of Congressman representing the Congressional District of Virginia. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are sorry to miss your call. Please leave your name, number, address, and message, and our office will return your call as soon as possible. You can also visit our website, .house.gov, for more information. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katrina, and I'm a constituent for I live at my number is I am calling I'm calling to demand that representatives stand up for the rights, well-being, and education of children, particularly those in marginalized groups, by opposing HR 7661. This bill places the federal government in the position of dictating what young people are permitted to read by threatening to withhold funding if certain viewpoints or topics appear in school collections. Using financial leverage to pressure schools to remove books is not educational policy. It's a federal intrusion into local decision-making and a direct challenge to the freedom to read. This legislation raises serious concerns that extend beyond censorship and intellectual freedom. HR 7661 embeds discriminatory outcomes through the mechanism of book restrictions. The bill uses the term transgenderism, which is hate speech, and defines any mention of trans people as sexually oriented material, which is not only offensive but patently untrue. Please stop this bill from trampling the right of American children to learn about the diverse cultures within our country. Thank you for your time and consideration. We did it! Okay. It is nerve-wracking for so many of us to make a cold call, even with a script, and it can feel like you're yelling into the void. It really does make a difference, though, to remind the people who rely on people like you to keep them in office that they represent you. Do this even if you didn't vote for your representative. They're still supposed to represent you and all of their other constituents. Do this even if you get emotional on the phone, or if, like me, you mess up your words. It's okay to express anger, grief, or sadness. Being a human is really okay. Just please, if you call during office hours, don't take out your frustration on the staffer who picks up the phone. If you get through to a person, it's not their fault. They're just taking your message. So get mad, but just not at them. A resource that I find really helpful, and I mentioned this earlier, is an app called 5Calls. I have zero affiliation to this app. I just find it really, really useful. It is free, and it makes it really easy to contact your representatives and senators directly. There's, of course, a switchboard for Congress. You can get to your representatives that way as well. But for me, the fewer steps I have to follow, the more likely I am to do something scary. That's just psychology. We're all like that. You put in your zip code into the app and it'll give you your list of representatives. You can also browse or search for issues that matter to you, and the app will generate a script for you. So you can read it off, you can adjust it, however you want to use that information, you certainly can. It also gives you some information on each issue that they've got listed there. That to me makes it easier to make that call, because if I start rambling, I don't know what kind of direction I'm going to go in, and I really want to make sure that my opinion comes through clearly. All right, this was a really heavy one, and while I generally like to make my channel a calm and cozy space, and we will continue to do calm and cozy videos. I've got a tag video planned, which will be completely different. In this video, I kind of hope I pissed you off to the point of taking action. Not pissed off at me, but at the people in Congress who put this bill forward. It really feels like the world is spinning out of control right now, but these small acts can make you feel better, and they actually do make a difference. If you decide to call, I would love to know in the comments, whether it's because of my video or maybe you already have called. If you don't feel like writing words, put in a phone emoji. And whatever you do, please keep reading, and I will see you in the next one.